1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ground Up Podcast. My name is Matt Walton, here with my co-host Matt Huber. How you doing, Matt?
Great, man. I'm fantastic. I'm full of energy this morning, even though you got me up probably a little earlier than I wanted to be to take a meeting about marketing. Two things that are not my favorite things, waking up early and talking about marketing, but I got to work out after that, and I'm full of energy right now.
I'm looking out for you this entire time. That's all I'm doing, all right? Just making sure that you're on the ball here. Guys, we have a great guest today. Her name is Taylor Martino. She has a lot to say about not only her professional ability in competitive diving, a retired D1 athlete, has so many things going on, but the biggest thing that she's here to talk about is how she helps new sales reps or people who are or sales reps looking to grow into a leadership role, how she coaches and manages and trains them into that position. So Taylor, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Matt. Excited to
Of course.
You're welcome, both of us.
Yeah, so start out and tell us a little bit about, because super interested in competitive diving, because that's crazy. I know I've seen the videos of them jumping off insanely high cliffs and things like that. Is that what you're doing? Or are you doing the ones where like as little splash as possible?
Yeah, so I did the 10-meter platform, which for those that don't know meters, it's 33 feet. So that's the like Olympic diving that you'll see there. I started doing that when I was 8 years old. My sister dove and I was like, oh, well, I have to be just like my sister. So I started doing that and I ended up getting on Team Canada at a pretty young age. I was on Team Canada for a long time, represented them, and then I got a scholarship to the University of Houston, moved down here, went through college, and I got a bad spinal injury right before the 2016 Olympics. So that kind of derailed my Olympic dreams, but led me to the path that I'm on now.
Yeah, I mean, Matt says this too, and we always believe this, is everything happens for a reason, and unfortunately that, Olympic gold would be awesome to have and, hanging up behind you when you do a podcast, but you're here for a reason, and it's awesome. So, I mean, when it comes to competitive diving, tell me about the mindset of that, because, I mean, I feel like you have to be perfect. You have to be perfect on everything, and everything has to go right. So tell me about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure with that idea of the perfect dive because it is a judge sport, right? They will sit there on the side and give you a score between 0 to 10, and you always want the 10. That means everything is perfect, right? The jump's perfect, the flips are perfect, your toes are perfect, your splash is nothing. So you're standing there scared because you're 33 feet in the air, knowing I could mess up at any moment and the whole thing's over. But there is a lot that comes with the mental mindset that you need to have to dive well, and that's trust in your coach, trust in yourself, and building on that muscle memory. And I think that translated really well into the sales world, just that belief in myself that I can overcome any hard obstacle. Like I have belly flopped off the 10 meter. Nothing is going to be worse than that I could experience in sales.
I'm not trying to belly flop from the side of a in-ground pool, much less
Yeah.
from a 10-meter thing. I will fight you like a wild animal if you try to push me off of a 10-meter platform of any sort. So I don't know how you did it, but that's impressive that you did. Now, so you mentioned the getting the 10, and getting that 10 score. Interested. How many times in your career did you get a 10? I mean, was it a frequent thing? Was it a super infrequent thing? I mean, so I play golf. I just went on this big golf trip this past weekend, and I'm chasing my first hole-in-one, right? I had a buddy of mine who missed it by this much this weekend, but how frequent is a 10, or is it something that's just almost never happens?
I'll be honest, the 10s almost never happen.
Okay, good.
Almost never. They happen in the Olympic finals because the whole world is watching and those are the best of the best and they bring the best of the best. But in your regular diving meets, I think I've had maybe 20 10s in my whole life and I dove for 12 years and competed almost every single weekend. So getting 10s is a really, I would say, pivotal moment, like when you hear 10 across the board, but it's all everything that builds up to that, right? You can't start at a 10. You have to start at a 6 and then a 7.5 and 8 and even 9s is like as close to perfection as you can get.
Or you start off at the belly flop. And
Yeah.
then you work your way back.
Let me ask you this in regard to that progression, and I think that's interesting, and we'll probably get more into the progression of your career here in a little bit, but is getting a 10 at 10 years old the same as getting a 10 in college? Like, is the grading system progress as well? Like getting a 10 is more feasible at 10 years old because the standards are lower, or do they maintain that standard to where the average 10-year-old, a good score is a 6? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it depends on the type of dive too, because when you're little, you're doing easier dives. And as you get older, you have to push those limits, right? I started doing front dive, front flip. By the end of my career, I was doing 3.5s, right? And you have all those twists and everything involved. So the dive gets harder and it gets much harder to impress judges because of what they expect of you. Where when you have a little 6-year-old on the board, they look cute and they're doing their thing, and it's all about building confidence and making sure they're having fun so that they want to push themselves to get to that 10 when they're older.
So who's like the greatest diver right now? Like the person that you're like, oh, this is the person at the top of the cliff.
The Olympics just happened last year. Cassidy Cook is a U.S. Olympian. Her and Sarah Bacon were silver medalists on 3-meter springboard. They're both good friends of mine. Tom Daley, he's a European multi-time Olympic champion. He's just retired. So those are two that are very prominent in the world right now.
It's awesome. Okay. So tell me, so yeah, you transitioned over, and is sales your first job out of this, or would you have a little bit of a career before this?
No, I went right into sales. I injured my spine in my junior year, and then that summer I got a sales internship, but I had no real job experience up until that moment because I was so into diving. That was my job. And so getting to get someone to give me an opportunity to have a full-time job when I graduated school was a really big challenge in itself because I had to convince them that the fundamental skills I learned as an athlete of grit, perseverance, time management, dedication would translate into sales and that I could be successful there. So that was a big pivot for me.
Why did you choose? Like, sales was kind of like my only best option based off of my personality traits and how I thought and how I worked. For you, it sounds like you probably had more options than us, but what was the reason why you decided sales? Why'd you go that direction?
Very competitive person, and I really love to win and to accomplish goals, right? So it's not about beating everybody else to me, but it's about I have a goal in mind and I'm going to accomplish it. And my cousin was in sales and she always had targets she had to hit. So to me, that was really exciting. And I could see myself getting almost obsessed with the metrics that were in front of me and how can I gamify the system to be better than the goals that were in place. So to me, it was all about that competitive mindset and hitting targets that I could keep progressing in my career.
Okay.
Did you start your career off in a brace or anything from the spinal injury, or were you?
No, I didn't. It took me about, I would say 6 months to be able to like drive without pain, but I didn't have a brace, luckily.
Okay, I was about to say that takes grit when you got like a
Yeah,
neck
no.
collar or something like that while you're doing sales.
Yeah.
What were you selling? What were you representing?
Yeah, I was inside sales. I was doing portable oxygen concentrators, so medical device sales over the phone. I was doing hundreds of cold calls every single day selling oxygen. Yeah.
Were you selling to doctors?
Doctors and patients directly. So it was both. You had to get everybody on board. And a lot of times they were very sick patients. And that was really tough because we were selling them the idea of a better life where they had freedom, flexibility to travel, see their families. And so that was very emotional. And then the doctor side was very clinical and straight to the point. So it was an interesting experience into sales where you needed to cultivate those personal relationships, but also be so factual and to the point.
So for me, I would say inside sales is very much defined differently by the industry, the company, the person. For me, when I think inside sales, just in my today's world, I think of a front to back sales cycle, as in you're going to do the prospecting, you're going to establish relationships, you're going to do the discovery, the presentation, any negotiation, and then close. When you're talking about inside sales in that role, were you having to sell, or I'm selling the meeting and then an expert's coming in and presenting that process? So it's a handoff to the next step.
We were responsible for getting everybody on the phone, getting those meetings, but it was a very fast sales cycle. So passing it off in that environment wouldn't have made much sense because we were doing sales weekly, I would say, was the cycle. So it was very fast. So we could churn through a lot of those leads, a lot of our prospects to get to the deal by. the end of the
One
week.
of the problems I've seen people who run a full sales cycle, I'd love to hear your kind of idea or thought on this, is I've seen a lot of full sales cycle sales reps be unable to differentiate the different stages of the sale in a full circle sales cycle. So for me, when I've managed and trained account executives, it's been really difficult for them to grasp the idea that on my cold call, on my initial conversation, to not act like the salesperson, but to act like the appointment setter, change the setting, and then I'm able to present and close. In that role, was it a single one call close type of thing? When I get a connection, I'm selling to, or was it a progressive step process for you?
Yeah, I think this is why it was a great first job because I would get them on the phone and I could sell them in that moment. There wasn't a need to have a demo call or even a proposal presentation. We could get on and get it done. And so I learned really quickly how to do all of the above, especially prospecting and being comfortable on the phone. So it was a great learning experience, like a crash course, I'd say. But in my experience for anything that's longer term, it is much more impactful to have those dedicated, we're appointment setting and now we're closing, to have them separated.
I want to ask about this because you said there was two sides of what you were doing with the sales, and obviously you talk to doctors, you're spitting facts and talking about this is what it's going to do for you, and then you're talking to patients and you're talking about the emotional side of things. And I think that's a big difference and key who you're selling with. I've sold to a lot of agents, real estate agents, things like that, and for me, it's if I talked on the phone and the agent, and they're usually the nicest people in the world, and they're like, "Hey, I'm sitting in chemotherapy right now," and like, I don't want to talk to you and deal with what you have to deal with. I don't want to sell you anything. I don't want to try and bug you and bother you. I'm sorry about what you're going through. I hope it goes well, and I want to get off the phone because I don't want to bother them with that. For you, you're calling people who are actually very sick and having to really connect with them. And so, tell me how that works in the
Yeah,
sales.
that piece was really tough, just from differentiating the two and asking those people for money. And I think that was a hard part when I had clients die. Like, that is the truth of the matter because they were sick. And so they would get the solution, and maybe a few days later, they would pass away. So, that as a young, worker in corporate America was really tough for me to grasp. And that's where I really decided I'm not fit for this type of setting because that took a big emotional toll on me and made it hard to want to sell them something, especially if they were going downhill so quickly. It just didn't feel right to me. So I did transition into tech sales from this experience. And I think that it was a great shift for me in terms of I could apply that factual, direct solution selling with the emotional pull of the better solution that's on the other side. We are still solving problems. It just wasn't life or death. And I think that was a good perspective for me to have going into tech sales, that I could do both sides of the coin and give them a better solution at the end of the day.
So once you got into the tech sales side of it, and I want to dive deeper into the emotional attachment of the conversation because for me, that's something I've never had to deal with. I've always been able to be very transactional in my sales process. Up until I created my own business where I then had to service the clients, almost all of my sales have been I sell it and then I hand it off to an account executive to then manage it. So I was never one of those guys that would just oversell it and deal with the problem after. When you go that route, there is probably a much different level of an emotional attachment, connection that you have to deal with. When you transition into the tech sales, was it hard for you to go more transactional?
Actually think it felt much more natural to me. I am very direct as a person. I'd like to tell you how it is. So that transition for me felt really nice because they did have problems and I could solve their problems with my solution. And so that's more the connection that I was able to lean on, instead of the whole emotional pull of where they wanted to visit their grandkids on vacation. So that felt more concrete, fact-based, and impactful to me from a business approach. So I really enjoyed that switch, and that's why I stayed in tech ever since.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to hit the emotional side of things because you got to figure out, you got to dig into the pain points. You got to figure out, hey, what's really bothering you? Because I mean, you can have the best solution in the world, but if it doesn't solve a problem, it doesn't fit that client, it doesn't sell. So
Yeah.
you have to find out and dig into the pain point, what's actually struggling with them. So what are some of the ways that you use to dig in and find that information?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits is the ability to just have a real conversation, right? Do your research before, and right now with AI, you can get so in the weeds of what people are dealing with from the specific level that they're at in the organization. They have their different initiatives and their challenges. And so being able to go into a meeting with your distinct point of view and then ask those hard-hitting questions like, what is the impact if this initiative doesn't happen? Right? Like, how will this impact your headcount next year if we can't hit the revenue target? All of those things, I think, bring out the pain more than people want to admit because fear does make people act. And so that's something that I have been able to lean on in a way.
So, talk us through. So we moved to a tech selling job. Your role there was also still full sales cycle.
Yes. So I was full sales cycle there. And then I started doing a team lead role where I was managing and selling at the same time. So that, how do they call it? Player coach role. And that's the experience that gave me the fact that I loved leading way more than I liked selling. It fired me up to be able to help someone close a deal so much more than when I did it myself. It really changed my mindset around how do I win in this world, which was helping my team win. And so once I had that experience, I knew I wanted to stay in leadership, and that's really what I was meant to do.
So, in the leadership side of it, what was the primary thing that you saw within your personality that allowed you to be able to get results from people? Because for me, when I'm trying to lead a team, I think it's important for me to be able to never ask my team to do something I have not done and I cannot do. And I think that you have to be a leader that people want to follow and that is worth, you have to be a leader that's willing to be led by, in a sense. So for you, as you make that transition, and I want to add a second point to this, did you find it difficult after to go from being a rep, organically growing into a leader, and having to now change your relationship with what was your peers now that are your subordinates? So I'd love to hear that part.
Yeah, I think those are all great questions. And one of the things that's always stuck with me is what you said, right? I'll never ask someone to do something I wouldn't do. And so I would, even when I was leading, get on the phone because I think it's important to lead from the front, especially when times are bad, right? When times are bad, I'm owning everything. How we're doing is on me, but when times are good, I will lead from the back. And I think that's a skill of a leader to be able to go back and forth and say, okay, things are going good. You guys are thriving. You guys are crushing it. I'm so proud of you. Look what you guys have accomplished, or you're in the background. But when things get bad, or when things are just even, you need to be leading from the front. And I think those skills that have allowed me to be able to do that is that I am very empathetic with my team. I encourage them, I support them, and I want them to be their best, but I'm very firm on what the expectations are. So it's being able to manage both of those high expectations and empathy of I appreciate you as a person and I respect you.
Well, Matt, and to Matt's point and your point too, so I do a lot of wholesaling, real estate wholesaling. It's not sales where I'm really like having to negotiate that much. I mean, on our contracts and things like that, or do a hard close or anything like that. If the numbers make sense, that we get the deal under contract and we sell them. So we have our virtual assistant business, and we have a bunch of people who sign up for virtual assistants. We have people that come to us who've never closed a deal before. And they're like, I want to hire virtual assistants because that's what I've heard they need to do. And I don't want to make all these phone calls anymore. I want somebody else to do it for me. And I want them to run and close deals for me. And I want to make a lot of money. We're like, all right, great. That sounds great. But you have no idea how to tell somebody how to close a deal. You have no idea how to close a deal or what the steps are in that deal. And so we see those people fail constantly who try and be leaders or run an organization or be a boss, and they have no idea how to tell somebody how to do it. So I think that what you said in the point of leading from the front, especially in the hard times where a lot of times people like to point fingers in those times and say it's your fault, but taking the accountability on that is something that a lot of leaders need to learn from and do.
One of the other things I would say, and Taylor, I don't know if you've experienced this, I've seen it a lot, is not every great leader has to be great at the job that they're leading. And I think so often companies make that vital mistake of taking my best salesperson and then organically making them the leader, where they don't have the skills to be an effective leader, but they are great at selling, but they can never duplicate themselves. So let's kind of get deeper into that. What do you think, like if you're looking at a company that you're willing to work with that needs help with how to train their leader to duplicate themselves, what are you looking for that leader to have and or not to have for you to determine if that's somebody that you can help?
Yeah, this is a conversation I had with so many times with my own reps who were talking about where should I go with my career, and that I have right now with reps and founders that are thinking about their first hire. But the biggest thing is exactly what you said. Just because you're great at selling doesn't mean you're a great leader. And sometimes we are hurting our company revenue when we promote that person because when they move up, that doesn't elevate the rest of the team. And it comes down to me to a few questions of really getting to know your rep. Do you want? Why do you think you want to be a leader? Is it because you want a title recognition, or is it because you want to empower everyone else to be successful? And those are two really different things where people get caught in a trap of thinking they have to be a rep, then they're a manager, and then they're director, and then they're CRO. It has to come down to why you want that role and what you want to see the success of the team become. Then once we have that rep that becomes a leader, it's really digging into, okay, we have to get to know the team. Because as much as we want to clone ourselves, you and me, Matt, we're different and we'll sell differently. And that's okay. But we have to understand the process that we go through and how can we customize it to you to make sure that it's impactful for you and it will be impactful for me.
It's so interesting you say that because I've said this for years. The way I sell is not very duplicatable, and this is not like me being egotistical, but I've got some natural personality traits that are unteachable. I speak confidently and with authority, and to try to teach somebody how to do that naturally, it's not going to come through with every person and really not many people. And so I created a systematic approach to be able to develop the average seller and still be able to maximize the top seller. And I think of like in the NBA, I look at who are the best head coaches ever. And it's never the Michael Jordan. It's never the Magic Johnson. It's never those guys that are supremely talented, but it is the Steve Kerr who created a motion-based offense or Phil Jackson who created a triangle offense. And those offenses are allowing you to maximize the role players, but also get the most out of the star players. And for me, when I elevated into that initial player coach role, I had to have enough self-awareness to know that if I tried to make a bunch of junior me's, I'll likely fail. But if I'm able to find a system that can use all the tools around me, that is a way that we can duplicate that. So I would question you on the idea of if I have a person who isn't a clone of myself, how do you do that?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the manager is responsible for learning the strengths and the weaknesses of their team. That is on the manager. We have to get to know them, what they want, what their skills are, and lean into that coaching aspect of leading, which is so much more important, in my opinion, than just pipeline reviews. Coaching matters. And so that's where we're able to develop the system that they can follow. Because, like you said, you are very confident and you speak with authority. Your new rep on the team isn't going to have that. So what tools can we give them to teach them the pathway? I'm a big fan of the challenger sale. So I think of it as like your lone wolves, your challengers, your relationship builders. You can't clone a lone wolf. It's never going to happen, right? They're going to do their thing their way. And so those people we do have to look out for. We should let them do what they do if they're doing it well, but we can't map that process. Can we map the process of the challenger? Absolutely. And those are the people that can then take on that leadership role, build out a system, and lead the team to success, whether they are lone wolves, relationship builders, challengers, etc.
So when you're actually coming up with a process, when you take on a new client here, what's kind of your process for diving in, understanding them? Because it's every client's different. And are you looking for just individual sales reps? Are you coaching for companies? Are you doing both? Start off with that
Yeah.
question, I guess.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a little bit of everything because I've had people ask, and I'm a big fan of I can say yes, and we'll see if it works. Fail forward, right? So I've been taking on a little bit of everything where working with the sales leader and the founder or the CEO has become really important because generally that's in those small companies, that's the order of progression. So when we have those conversations, it's what are the main goals of the team? Where do we want to see the team grow? And are we confident that this leader will be able to grow into that model, right? And how do we develop the team to support that? Because oftentimes, like we've said, you just take your best seller and promote them and you lose all that revenue. Nobody can risk that right now. So how do we make sure we're backfilling that? Because I'm not a fan of the player coach model. I don't think you have enough bandwidth to be great at both of those at the same time. One of them will always take priority over the other. And oftentimes it's where your commission comes from, which is selling, not leading. So then you don't have a leader and the founder gets stuck leading the team, and that's not sustainable either.
It's interesting, and this is where, and Taylor, I think this is a healthy discussion because I actually am a fan of the player coach role. I think it's got to be the right player coach. I think it has to be a person who's really good at time management, who understands that in order to really lead the team, you have to be willing to, get in the trenches with the team. I find one of the biggest challenges in my time of seeing sales organizations try to promote the top sales guy to be that is that in most cases, top salespeople take a pay cut.
Yes.
To become a sales leader. And so that's to your point that you were saying earlier of what is your motivation? Is it you want a title? Is it you want more money? Is it you want this? And understanding what that is and then having that founder build a custom program for what's incentivized. And if you have just an out and out great seller who can't lead people well, then adjusting their comp structure and making them a senior base seller to be able to emphasize their motivational factors are great. And when you have somebody that probably comes from your my cloth, which is a passion around developing people, then I would always be willing to take less money to be able to help the people around me build and establish something than to me have to do it all myself. And all of my income is tied to my own self. And so for me, knowing the real lever pulls that you have to make with your team is probably the most important part as a founder. And like you, I consult with a lot of founders, and a lot of times the founders by default in these small software companies or startups, they are the seller because they're the only person who can explain their product or their service well enough. And in most cases, they're not good at selling. So by bringing in a team like Spinwheel offers of staffing professionals, or bringing in a professional like you to help teach them who to look for, how to hire, how to offload that off their plate is probably the biggest, I think, the second biggest decision a founder can make after starting their business and making that big jump, which is how do I get out of the day-to-day side of the sales operation? So when you meet with a founder, how do you consult with them on that? They're the person doing the selling. They're the person managing the business. In reality, they should be the CEO, but they're the head of sales. They need to bring in a person. They have no clue how to bring it in because they don't even know really how to sell themselves.
Yeah, this is something I've learned a lot from my friend Jake Wolpart, just to plug him on here. But I've learned a lot from him and how he works with founders on their first sales hire. And it's really establishing, like we talked about for a manager, like what's the process of how you sell? Because if we're still doing founder-led sales and they're, having conversations with everybody, being the founder, getting them excited about the product, your sales rep can't do that. That's not replicable because you're not the founder. And so we need to make sure before we get that hire that we take time to establish a process. How will we sell this? Who are we selling to? And what timeline are we giving to teach the salesperson how to do that? Because I think a lot of times founders want results quickly. They expect their rep to come in and be just as good as they were. And when they tell them, okay, go do it, like I just do it. We need training and we need to customize that program to get the sales rep up to speed to have confident conversations. And a lot of it comes down to identifying who we need them talking to and about what.
This is a thing Matt and I've had a conversation about is, I've been running my business for a little over 2.5 years. Matt and I have been running a business together for the past year. And we've been lucky with the amount of success we've had in the short period of time of being able to duplicate ourselves and grow future leaders within our business. One of the things that Matt and I talk about all the time is that nobody is going to care about our business the way we care about our business, no matter how much we pay them. No matter what we do, they're never going to care about our business as much as we do. And I think that's the problem a lot of founders have when they're trying to bring in somebody is the person they bring in doesn't have the same sweat equity in the success of the business. They don't have the same outcome expectations in the business, and they don't have the title to be able to throw around that those do. So if you're dealing with and maybe there's not one way to do it, I'm sure there's not one way to do it, but in a preferred model, when you're meeting with that founder-led sales guy and he wants to bring it in, what do you think might be the best approach for him to get the best results and maybe stair-step in to him progressing out? Or do you believe it's bringing in a full sales cycle person, take over everything, bringing in an SDR team to supplement the front end or even maybe the follow-up side? What do you think is the best?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't experienced bringing in like an SDR team. That might be something to consider outsourcing, but I only think you can do that if you have the messaging, the problems, the pains, and the actual outcomes locked in. And I think that's where a lot of founders are still struggling when they are doing founder-led sales, because they don't have it all mapped out, laid out, and really established yet, which I do think a salesperson should come in and help them figure that out. Obviously, the founder needs to have, these are the pains, these are the outcomes, but that messaging I think still needs to be tweaked and played with. So I haven't experienced bringing in that sort of outsourced BDR team, but from my experience with bringing in a sales rep, I'm looking for someone that has done that before, because those people like risk. And coming into founder-led sales is a risk that there's a lot of reward for taking big risks like that. But they do have to be comfortable putting themselves out there, being the first SDR at this company, and figuring it out for themselves.
So I want to speak to that part too, because once again, Taylor, you and I have so much in common, but I think you and I see that part differently too, and I'm gonna dig into that. Now, Matt, you know how I feel about where to hire and how to hire. What are your thoughts now as time's gone on? Like, if you weren't working with me and you were meeting with a person to help you build out a team, do you think, Matt, that it's best to bring somebody in that has that experience that you can maybe plug in, who's already kind of gone through those battles and have learned, and then they can kind of apply it? Or do you think it's better to bring somebody in with no experience and kind of groom them from scratch?
It's hard to say because our company here brings a lot of people from scratch and then we train them up. But I think one of the biggest ways, if you're going to go into closing, I think that they need to go and learn how to set the appointment and talk about it first. And something that we do is when we look for people who are going to be closers, you have to go through and learning how to set that appointment for the closer. So I think that one of the ways that we've been doing it, I think that I like the best, is having those people come in and work to just sell those appointments, work to talk to those a prospect, get all that down, sell the appointments, and learn how to get that done while you listen to the closers close. And as the closers close, you get better and better, and you find more people to move up into a closer role after they've learned how to prospect and build up their pipeline and things like that. That, to me, I think has been one of the most rewarding things to see, is people who do really well like that and grow into those closing roles and learn more about it. I want to hit on the point that you guys talked about a little bit beforehand, which is no one's going to care about your business more than you as the owner, because I've had sales roles for a long time in my life, and I've never considered myself a good seller. I never liked it. I never cared about the product enough to be a great seller. But now that we sell our own stuff, I'm very passionate about it, and I know how to get it done. And so, watching somebody as CEOs who you talk to all the time, Taylor, and we talk to it too, is tampering their expectations of this person's not going to come in and put 80 hours a week, more than likely, into the business like I have, like me and Matt did when we first started up, and to get everything going. They're going to put in their 40 hours, they're going to work really hard, and it's great. I'm thinking about 70% of what I do, 70 to 80%, then I have a killer. That's what we look for. Did I answer your question at all? Or did I kind of go way?
Yeah, no, you did. But let me explain to Taylor why I take the approach I do, and maybe she can help me with where my deficiency is. Because I think that one of the reasons why I go the approach I go is because I know my strength as a coach. I know my strength is not hiring. I know my strength is not interviewing. Now, I can look at somebody and I can look for personality traits, but I fundamentally believe everybody is overstating their value of their resume and overstating their ability to deliver on their resume. So for me, where I've found why I don't typically hire people based off their resume is because I find that they typically can't execute that process, and I end up having to unteach a lot of bad habits instead of instilling the right habits within them. But that also is because I'm so confident as a coach. Now, maybe you might look at the alternative way because maybe you're far better at interviewing. Maybe you're far better at being able to identify this person is somebody that can come in and play. So maybe talk with me through that, if that's maybe why that you might have kind of a different preference in filling that gap.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time that I go this way is because by the time I get to founders, oftentimes they might have that first sales rep, or they are so overwhelmed with selling that they don't have time to lead. So we need to bring someone in that can make an impact quickly. I've needed people who can come in, learn the process, learn the product, and sell it. Because they
Makes
need
sense.
fast results because the founder doesn't have the bandwidth for that anymore. And
Do you
oftentimes that's an area of, well, you still need to train them. We still need them to learn everything in your head. And so it is slower than they want, but it's faster, in my opinion, than having an SDR.
Oh, I 1,000% believe if you hire the right person with that experience, then it's 10 times faster. And it's also likely a better hit rate. And for us, the way we hire, it's a big hit or miss rate. And we have to go through a lot of people to then find the right people. But when we hit, the ceiling is much higher, in my opinion. I'm willing to go through the headache and the hassle of having a 50% retention within 3 weeks of my training class and hiring quick, firing quick, moving people in and out quickly based off of their ability to execute and digest that. Now, when you consult with a founder and owner, do you also talk with them about how they should compensate these employees?
Yeah, compensation, it definitely comes up. It's not something that I've done often, except from giving my guidance when we're talking about promoting that seller to a leader, right? How we change their compensation plan, because oftentimes it's like 50-50 or maybe even more comp than your base. So we do have to change that when they move to leadership. And that's often a bigger discussion in terms of how we need to forecast that accurately, because it's not a player coach. They're just leading.
Yeah, it's interesting because especially for these founder-led, they have so many more opportunities in ways to get creative on how to build their comp structure. And I think that when Matt and I started our business, Matt was like, what the hell type of comp structures are you building? And I was building these very, very out-the-box creative comp structures to try to get overall buy-in from the people I'm trying to recruit in and negotiate. I think the standard way sales organizations do is like 70% salary, 30% performance-based incentives. I think that is, for me, a very boring way to do it. I like to do 50-50. I like 50 salary, 50% performance-based with accelerators based off of extremely high performance. Do you have a preference that if the owner came to you and said, what is the way that's going to get me the best results at the highest rate? Is there a way you like to perform or like it to be set up?
For leaders, I like a higher base because they are putting in more coaching hours. They are investing in the team, whether they are going to produce quick results or long-term results. So I do like the leader having a bigger base. Maybe it's 70, maybe it's 65. And I do think they also need those accelerators. But to me, the accelerators, because oftentimes they're an afterthought, they need to be put in place early, like beginning of the year, right when you get your comp plan, because that's how it actually incentivizes you. Having the accelerator for, let's say, President's Club, if it's not locked in early, then it really loses all the momentum that you'll gain from that accelerator experience. So locking those accelerators in early is scary for a founder, I've found, because they're committing to paying a lot more than they would like to. But the benefit of that is they've brought in so much more revenue than if they just had the standard expectation.
No, I've had the same experience where founders will be hesitant to have those big payouts, but like if you comp correctly where a payout is tied to revenue, then it only means you've made so much more in revenue. And that's, for me, I get scared on paying the base. I get scared on paying the salary because that is a guaranteed income that is not tied to your ability to perform. Now, do you believe that if a comp structure should be set up and set for like a year, or do you think it's something that should change quarterly or change frequently based off the objective goals of where the business is going?
Yeah, I do have experience with changing comp plans on my team multiple times because we had to. It wasn't incentivizing the right behaviors. And so I think that's what matters. If the comp plan is incentivizing the right behavior, let's keep it. Then there's no reason to change. If it has the right revenue number attached to it, the math makes sense, and we're getting the right outcomes, keep it. If it's not, then we need to change it quickly and do it often until we have that figured out. There's nothing worse than having a comp plan that incentivizes the wrong behaviors because then you're just teaching the wrong thing. So until the comp plan makes sense from outcomes and behaviors, change it. But if we have the right one, I think you should have it for a year.
And last question on comp, because I mean, it's not what we're here to do, but I do like that. I think it's an interesting kind of discussion overall. If you're building out a comp structure for a leader who's leading a team, a lot of times what I've done is I've given them a comp override on the money they are able to lead their team to make. So the more money they can have their team members make, they make a comp override off of that, which incentivizes them to coach their people to make as much money as possible, and in turn they make that. And as long as the employees' comp structure is aligned to revenue, then we all win across the board in that regards. Is there a comp structure, whether that be monthly, override, individual performance plus team's performance, that you feel has been the most successful in your history?
For me, it's a quarterly comp plan. I think that's really allowed the team to be able to grow and have changes. I think monthly, I have experienced that too. Changes too fast, right? Like you can have a great month and then a bad month, and then you're just up and down on the roller coaster. Where quarterly, when you're paying people that way, it allows time for churn to happen on the team because it will, and then we can still backfill those outstanding roles. People can fill in the gaps where the leader, when they're over the whole team, isn't feeling such a burden because they have to make those cut decisions if someone's not performing. But there's always that, okay, well, I'll lose this person who only hits 55%, but that's still 55% of revenue that I'm going to miss if they're not here. And so when we can balance that out with longer term comp plans that are more, okay, this is your whole year objective. How can we evaluate that? I do think that matters. And I have seen spiffs for if your whole team is at 80% plus, you get this extra bonus, right? Because we're incentivizing only keeping those high performers on the team.
There's two different models of setting quotas in sales. One is setting a glamorous quota that if they make 80%, we're happy. And one is setting a quota that is actually measurably achievable. Do you believe one is better than the other?
That setting an attainable quota is better and people will outperform it, right? If you set the too high quota, people will lose motivation because they know it's out of reach and then they won't put in the same effort. If you set an attainable quota, people will be more motivated and they'll go over it. It's all the mindset of sales. You want to be successful, and when you are successful, that builds momentum. So to me, attainable goals actually gives you that higher result that you wanted in the first place.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that tying your comp with accelerating above it is a measurable way to have good goals with comp that incentivizes, blowing out the water.
I want to take it back over really quick before we jump into our lightning round here, because I'm always interested in this. You said earlier that people can have a great sales career, and that's it. Like they can do their sales role, and they can be happy, and they can make a lot of money, and they can be okay. We had a lady. I used to work at a company called Hibu, where I sold digital marketing a lot. And there's a lady there that kept asking her to be a leader. She'd been there for a long time. She kept saying no because she had built up enough accounts she was managing. She was making so much money that she was just happy with where she was, and she would never move up, and she was cool with her sales role. But us, and I know there's a big culture right now for entrepreneurship and people running their own businesses and things like that. And I get it because me and Matt are doing the same thing, and you too, Taylor. But like you said, there's a way for you to have a really great career working for somebody also. So I want to know in your head, like you go from a good sales career to entrepreneurship. What made you make that switch, and how did you feel when you did it?
Yeah, one of the biggest reasons for me was that I love coaching people who want to be coached. And I think as a leader, that's a really important thing to distinguish. If you have control of your team, if you have all of the key pieces in place with who you are working with and who you are trying to excel their career, I do believe there's a big difference in how motivated I am if someone wants that coaching. And I didn't want to be tied down with more of the burdens of managing a department, doing all those things. I love coaching and I love leading, and that's what gets me excited every day. The other flip side of that is I did have a tough experience learning that nobody's going to look out for you the way that you will. And so you have to put yourself first. I was laid off after I told my company I was pregnant. So, job security, employment security, I think employment security is a lot better. And so I had to put myself first. I'm building a life that I want to be proud of and excited about. And I kind of had to take the bull by the reins and do what's best for me.
Matt, I want to ask you, how did you feel when you took the lead? Because Matt fought it for a long time, and he kept going, all right, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and then he'd get a W-2 job, and he's like, all right, I'm just going to take this job for a little while, and he'd do that, and he kept doing it over and over again. But finally, I think, he was with a company, and he got to the point where he couldn't take it anymore, and they had to go, and now he took the jump fully. So I want to know how you felt when it happened.
Yeah, golden handcuffs are a son of a bitch, I tell you.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor's story is a very similar story than mine in a variety of different ways. There was a period of my career where I put everything into the company, and I was in that mindset of I want to be here for the rest of my career, and I want to build something that will be my legacy within this corporate world. And the company had other opinions of me in that regards, and no matter how much I put into it, I realized, like everybody else, I was just a number, I was just a tool, and I was just a resource. And so that was my first shift, which happened in around 2021 when I left this company that I really had planned to be at for the rest of my life, and really, in my opinion, changed the landscape of that business. And changed the landscape of my career at the same time. I took 3 promotions in a matter of a year. I never took a salary increase. I took a title increase, a role increase, and I brought a ton of new ideas and things to the business, and kind of sacrificed that based off of, man, I know the company will do the right thing and give me equity and give me, part of the company over time. And when we got to that period, they found a way to not do it. And so to Matt's point, at that point, I had vowed to myself I would never go work for another company again. But so often companies would come by and say, hey, come do this, come do this, come build this. And I would always get excited about the project and the idea behind that. But yeah, over the past year and a half, I put my feet in the water, but then pull my feet out, and then put my feet in the water, then pull my feet out. And I think I'm finally at the point now where between Matt and I and everything that we've got going, that I think that we're past that part of it. And I'll still work with those companies, but I'll work with them in a consulting capacity, not as a W-2 capacity. I think I enjoy the most is that I now have the option of saying yes to what I want, and don't have to make the choice of taking somebody just because they're paying me a amount of money that I feel like I want to get.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you did. All right, so we're gonna jump over into this lightning round real quick. It's meant for us to, ask questions, get quick responses, come up with clips and things like that to help not only grow your business and ours, and to put more content out there. So I'll start it off. What are the 3 things that you do when you have a new client that helps you get to know them quickly?
I do a prep form. It's quick questions. Give me the high level. Where are we trying to go? Give me the insights on what the goal is, and what leadership skills do you look for in your first leader?
Perfect. Now, similar question to a salesperson. If there's 2 characteristics that a successful person who's considering going into sales should have, what are the 2 most important things somebody should have to be great at sales?
Resilience and curiosity.
Gotcha. How do you build resilience?
You have to go through it, right? Like, you have to put yourself in places to be resilient. You can't just wake up one day and say, I hope I have resilience. You have to go through things that give you the muscle memory and give you the skills to become resilient. And that's why in interviews I ask, tell me about a time when, multiple times, because anyone can come up with one, but can you give me 2, 3, 4, 5 examples of that?
So you mentioned earlier that you were laid off from a job when you told your company that you were pregnant. So I assume that you have kids, right? Okay. Matt and I are both parents as well, and a lot of what we do and a lot of what we talk about here is how to make sure that we set our kids up for that best success possible. What you just said is that resilience is one of the most important things. Now, I would say not just in sales, but in life. for somebody who is hoping to create such a successful career that you can provide a life that your child or your kids do not have to go through the things that maybe we did as kids? How do you inherently, as a parent, create resilience into your kids?
Yeah, one of the things my husband and I talk about a lot, because he was a golfer, he was a professional golfer for a couple years, is that our kids will do sports, right? They can be terrible at them, but they will be in sports to learn those fundamental skills, time management, dedication, right? Having a goal, trying to get it, and losing. They need to learn how to lose and how to win, and that key resilience piece. So our kids will be in sports, and hopefully they do it for a long time and love it, but we'll try different things. I think that is one of the biggest skills that I could give my child.
Do you refuse the participation trophy, or
Yes.
you let them take it? You
I hate
do.
participation trophies.
Got it. All right. So what are some things that you brought over from sports when you went to your sales career that helped you stand out and help you become a leader?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was being able to get rejected and get all of the no's and be okay with it. Because I had experienced lots of times where I wanted to win and I didn't. And that's okay because I knew that I would take feedback and go forward. So being able to lose and keep my positive mindset that I would get it the next time and be coachable. Something I think is extremely important is, okay, I'm giving you feedback, but can you actually act on it? Right. So being able to do that was a huge skill I learned from diving because I got feedback after every single dive. So I love feedback. And that's why I love giving feedback.
So it's interesting you say, I love getting feedback and I love giving feedback. And I'm the exact same way. But what I've found is most employees don't want to get feedback. Most employees want to just be able to survive their day. So if you have an employee on your team who isn't aggressively seeking that feedback and doesn't have that student mentality, how do you deal with that employee and what do you do to try to build that in them?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I like to do was focus on the call reviews. And so for my call reviews, because I would have teams of 10, 15 people, it's hard to have time to do all of that. So I would delegate to them, okay, pick your calls and send me the clips that you want feedback on. So then, and tell me what you think you did well and what you can improve on. So I like to put coaching on the rep so that not only do they know what's happening, they're invested in it. Because if they're sending me something where they think it's really good and I'll just give them good feedback, then it's my job to find something else to give them,
Right.
real feedback on. But it also gives me insights into how they think, right? If they only give me negative things about themselves, I have to find the positive and make sure they know there is something they're doing well and we can expand on where they need to improve. But that's why I like to flip it on them and have it be a two-way approach as opposed to me just lecturing them.
So we're going to go into the last couple questions that we have typically, but I'm curious about your answer on this because Matt does consulting also, and I do a little bit of consulting for wholesale as well. You can't replicate yourself, but I want to know what your 5 and 10 year goal is and how you're going to grow this business.
Yeah, right now it's just me. I'm still starting. So for me, my goal is to be, obviously make more money than my W-2 ever provided, but I want more time. I can't buy time. I mean, I have an 18-month-old. Hopefully we have more kids down the line. And that's the most important thing to me right now is that I can be there for her. And so if I can grow this business in a way that buys me more time with my kids and my husband, that's the number one priority for me where I can still have an impact, still, feel successful in business, but I can't buy more time.
If you could give one biggest piece of advice to somebody who's starting their professional career, what would that advice be?
Always be learning, right? Look for mentors. You can learn something from every single person you come across, whether that's something you want to replicate or something you want to do the opposite of. So always be cognizant of what you can pick up from other people and who you're surrounding yourself with, especially as you're growing. Your first leader is really important. And so that's who you will learn from. And so if you have the choice, I would set yourself up with the right leader who will encourage your career growth because they could put you on the fast track to success or they could really keep you in that one place. So learn from everybody you can.
It's so interesting you say that because Matt has taught me something major that first off, I'm very cheap. I'm very stingy when it comes to money. And Matt has taught me something where I've consulted a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, people pay me a decent amount of money to do that. But then I was so resistant to go getting coaching from outside people, paying people like me to help sharpen my skills. And that's something Matt, I've always been impressed with. He joined these groups. He paid for a mentorship program. He sought to close his gaps in places he did. And that's something that, man, yeah, if I would go back to my younger self, I would just say, don't chase money in your 20s, chase skills and mentorship. And if you can establish skills and mentorship, the money will inherently come right into your lap. But chase those other things. I made the mistake when I was young. I chased the best paying jobs and said, forget everything else, just give me money. And that, yeah, so you're preaching to the choir there in regards to the focus of leadership.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
I mean,
waited too long to get my first coach, right? Like I have a business coach now, and I waited too long to get my sales coach and my executive coach. And so, yeah, definitely talking to my younger self to get a coach, get a mentor, which is like, I love doing that now. So why would I not pay for it?
yeah, mine was just mostly I'm impatient. I was like, all right, if somebody else has already gone through a bunch of crap and they've learned a bunch of mistakes, like I'll learn from them, so I don't have to make those mistakes. I'll make my own after that. That was my thought process on it. All right, so last question here. At the end of the day, Taylor goes to close her eyes for the last time, and she's gonna leave a legacy behind. What legacy do you want that to be?
Someone that was willing to give back and to help other people. I think that is really important to me because it applies to all aspects of my life. I want my family to know that I would give everything for them and that I'm there for them whenever they need me. And I do want my, clients to know that I gave everything I had to them. I think my whole thing is about being a good person. That's how I led a team. I want you to be the best person you can be. And so for me, I want people to ideally know that about me too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know Matt did. Matt was excited to talk to somebody on the sales side of it. Every time we get somebody with sales, he loves to go in on that. So thank you so much, guys. If you've got any insight on this like I did from Taylor, if you learned anything from it, please like, subscribe, comment, share, hit the bell icon, alert every time we drop these podcasts every Monday. Taylor, thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
1, 2,